the Planned Parenthood ruling has reignited debates around reproductive rights in America. How could this influence the upcoming United States election and social policy directions can give to the US people? Shamsul Alam Panthu.
Well, I mean, there has been numerous immigrants who have migrated to America from not only from South America, but also several states in Asia and Europe as well. And what we used to understand that any child that was being born in American land would automatically be granted an American citizenship. Now, Donald Trump had challenged this ruling, and as of recent, a federal court had blocked Donald Trump's ban for this kind of movement. Of course, Planned Parenthood is very well required in a nation that is so volatile and so large, such as the United States of America. And most of them, and definitely before Donald Trump's second presidency, we understood that the world was going through a change of globalization. So the more openness everyone had is how they used it as their strategic advantage. However, in recent days, we see a step back from that kind of globalization. We understand that Donald Trump favors much of the white community inside his own country. I'll give you an example. He became very vindictive of Zoran Mamdani, who won the primary mayoral post just a couple of weeks ago. And what had him very concerned was that we'll have him denaturalized and then we will have him deported. These are the comments made by Donald Trump. So as you can see, that old notion of any child being born in American land, regardless of what kind of lineage or ethnicity they hold, they would be given the American citizenship. I also have someone in my close family members who were born in America and who now live in America. Of course, the current administration should understand how much the immigrant population adds on to the US economy. Definitely it will have an effect on how these communities are marginalized.
Sir, sometimes don't you feel it that Donald Trump is breaking all the norms of the American presidency, and this time we see no activities by the foreign secretary, I mean Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He is so silent.
Before Donald Trump came into power, Marco Rubio was one of those people who were very held vast criticisms of Donald Trump. However, if you look at his leadership, he's being a very autocratic, someone who is pushing around all the civil society, someone who is pushing the courts, someone who is pushing the intelligence agencies into what the administration really wants. Of course, it's headed by Donald Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is in a 5-day state visit of Scotland, and he is joined by the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. So they were addressing the damned issue of the Israel escalation in Gaza. But as per your original question about the birthright citizenship that people used to think of America, it will definitely create households where they will think of other countries which may be beneficial to their livelihoods. Of course, if it was the US, right now much of the US population are in shimmy. They do not know, they do not understand how far or so Donald Trump's policies will benefit them before any kind of policy making outside of America's borders.
My question would be, rights groups accuse Israel for genocide in Gaza. What should the international community's legal and moral response be under current international law frameworks, or according to UN Charter or Geneva Convention, or agreement during the Bill Clinton's time, two-state solution?
Western leaders and many leaders around the globe will always propose this two-state solution, which has drastically failed as of the last couple of years. We've seen Israel and Palestine being at neck to neck, and of course now the Palestinians have become a minority in their own country, where the minorities were the Israelis who have came in onto the ship onto the Palestinian shores way back in 1948. Mr. Kazi was saying how important history plays, and history has definitely a role. If you don't learn from the mistakes of the past, those mistakes are bound to repeat once again. And this is where even Donald Trump, when he was sitting next to Keir Starmer yesterday, he had mentioned how people are dying and how people are dying from starvation out of all things. It's not a military escalation, it's more of a humanitarian crisis. and at this moment the death toll is now approaching 60,000. Very on this show, even 2-3 weeks back, we were reporting of 54,000. So just in the matter of a few days, we have seen the death toll jump 6,000-7,000. So the loss of life is prevalent here. And as you said, what are the roles of the international community, and how people are reacting to a country breaking international law? You know that the Hague Group had convened a meeting earlier last week or a week before. Almost about 30 countries have all joined together condemning this escalation, this humanitarian crisis. And of course, Europe as a large nation is also looking at options such as sanctions, or options where the Israeli Defense Forces and the Europe's strategic alliance may be hampered because of such a worldwide scale humanitarian crisis. Right now, world leaders can only condemn, can only criticize, but I don't see any major nation stepping out here, except for that even yesterday we spoke about the silence of Arab nations. And one thing is definitely there to point out, Qatari state media channel Al Jazeera has been recording and reporting this incident from outside Israel, because Israel had blocked their reporting and disallowed their reporting in Gaza and Israel. So it just comes to show, even after a small notion from Qatar, Israel would not accept. Even previously, there was a minister in Israel who had said those who will watch Al Jazeera should be tried. So such a leader inside Israel definitely puts fire to the radicalization of Israelis in the settler attacks as well. We've recorded those. Obviously, this has been the greatest humanitarian disaster I have ever seen in my lifetime, a modern day apartheid. All these words would be far too less to describe what is actually taking place in Gaza.
Russia continues drone and missiles attacks on Ukraine with significant damage and disruption to civilian and infrastructure sites. Conflict remains protracted. My question to Shamsul Alam Panthu is, with Trump linking tariffs to Russia's war conduct, is economic pressure replacing military deterrence in the global order? And one just addition, America is also trying to put 100% orders on Russia's allies like Brazil, India, China, because these three big countries are still buying Russian oil, which is giving the financial support to Russia.
Well, of course, the countries you mentioned, India, China and Brazil, they are also a pact with Russia within the BRICS forum. And of course, America sees the BRICS as a threat to his nation. As he previously said, that any country that allies with the BRICS shall face an additional 10% tariff. Of course, there is a news from the Russia as well. I'll bring it out. Russia bans gasoline exports until August 31st. As of yesterday, they put it into an effect. However, as you know, this gasoline becomes very important in the winter months across Europe. That is when the demand for heating systems go high in Europe, and that is where Russia can choose to control. And definitely, as per your initial question, before it was a military deterrence was used in a global order, but right now it's more of an economic game and economic trade and ties. Of course, at this moment, the BRICS nations such as India, China and Brazil, those who have had relationships with Russia with export as well, are now being marked by the US. I'll give you an example specifically for India. This is a nation that sees Russia and the US as their allies, where both those allies are in tussle with each other, definitely Ukraine. But if you look at Ukraine, Ukraine has a strong backing from the NATO countries in the space of reconstruction of Ukraine after such a war escalation goes down. Of course, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni of Italy has promised Volodymyr Zelensky in Ukraine that they will keep a budget for them to reconstruct Ukraine to its best capacities. But if you look at Russia, I don't think Russia is suffering, even after facing numerous sanctions. And if you look at the allies of Russia, you look at China, you look at North Korea, you look at Iran as well. These are countries that share animosity between America and themselves. And they realize that the power that the Americans had held over the entire globe over the last 100 years is now slowly started to fade away to other powers in Asia such as China. Their dominance in the fields of technology and in the fields of manufacturing are so unparalleled that even if Donald Trump wants to make America the greatest construction or the greatest manufacturing country in the world, it will definitely come before all those other countries who manufacture: Vietnam, Cambodia, Bangladesh, Malaysia, much more countries in the Asian region, including China. It will have to have devastating tariff effects, which we will see. As you know, today is the 29th, and we have about 2 to 3 more days before such an order starts proceeding. And as for Bangladesh, we are still stuck with 25 Boeing airplanes for the promise of a decline from 35%, which is very shocked to say, even though countries such as Qatar, countries such as Saudi Arabia, UAE, Singapore, Malaysia, they are all full of people from our country who have only one job: to build such skyscrapers, build all those fancy looking buildings that people come to spend millions on. I believe that the Bangladeshi laborers who are outside, we also know them as remittance warriors, they are not being credited for their contribution into such developing economies outside.
Sir, I was listening you very carefully, and one very light question has come in my mind. If NATO is built for the security of the Western countries under the leadership of United States,
Yes.
sir, why NATO is not inviting Russia to be their member?
Well, this question you asked me as well on a previous show yesterday as well. There is an aspect of history over here. You know that the Soviet Union had been broken apart back in the 90s, and ever since then they had an urge to come back to the previous state they were in. And of course, NATO had pushed its limit when they said that Ukraine should be a part of NATO, which prompted the Russian Kremlin to start attacking Ukraine into what they believe is historical land, as well as they also believe that with Azerbaijan as well. So why NATO not asking Russia for their attendance into their membership? Of course, NATO is backed by Canada and the US, which Russia sees very retaliatory, and this is why, in my opinion, why Russia would say that they are better off than NATO. I'm pretty sure even all the NATO countries combined will not be half of what geographic location of what Russia is.